So sometimes I forget about your time with the Steelers organization, and I think it's a great segue here. There's a lot to take away, and there isn't always, but even though this game's a few years old from back in 2015, there's a lot about both of these teams that are reasonable conversations to be having about the NFL today as we move it forward. I think it's an interesting portion of the Steelers that fan base for a very long time seemed to be at least frustrated that they haven't won more, which I find hysterical as a Raiders fan. But I get it. Like, you look around and you think, oh my God, we have the quarterback, we've had the weapons, we've got Mike Tomlin, we should be winning Super Bowls. There's got to be some acknowledgement that there was a guy named Brady and Belichick together that made that a little bit difficult. That was a difficult wall to climb. But you look back at this Steelers team and you look back at some of the successes that Tomlin has had. I think one of the best parts about it, and we've talked about this with some other coaches recently, the coaches that are capable of saying, here's what we got, how do we make it work? I mean, Mike Tomlin was getting a lot of return out of this team in this moment, even with an aging Michael Vick, even in limitations that would cause other teams to look terrible. It didn't always look easy, but I think we have to give a little bit of a kudos here to Mike Tomlin, the head coach, for what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that made a resurgence this last year, right? Sort of the same deal. Now, in that year, they had used Landry Jones, some who had been a backup there also, and finally went to Mike Vick in this Monday Nighter. But this past year, we saw what happened with Duck Hodges and the whole cavalcade of backups they had to trot onto the field. And Mike Tomlin is incredibly adept at making that work and empowering his coordinators to do so. That's something he's done throughout his time in Pittsburgh. But absolutely, I mean, and he was a guy, again, in my personal experience, that comes from having an understanding of your entire roster from first to 53rd. And when I was there, first through 90, he would come up and have a conversation with every guy. He knew what you were. He knew the strengths that you were going to bring to the team. And so he was going to put guys in a position to win doing that. And that's what comes with continuity. Like, Pittsburgh is one of those places that is lauded for what continuity has done. And between your head coach and Mike Tomlin and your GM and Kevin Colbert, they all have an understanding of how they do business. And so what comes of that is the trust from 1 through 53 that when somebody goes down, we're going to be able to make the adjustments necessary.
You know, I think it's interesting you mentioned continuity. When I was a little podcast that most people never heard of before I was ever at ESPN, Adam Schefter was nice enough to come on the pod. And it was funny. I asked him in the first time I ever interviewed him, I said, what's the difference between greatness and terrible in the NFL? Like, what is that line? Because he was pointing out that the line is so thin. And his answer was continuity. And that's always stuck in my head because I'm not sure how you get that right for so many organizations when you aren't hiring well. Like, some owners just can't pick great coaches. And I'm not sure when you're supposed to cut that off and say, okay, let's find a different guy. Let's find a different guy. There's a fine balance on there. But you're right. The continuity that this Steelers organization has, it's funny to me that you can go back for now a generation of Steelers games and you're going to know who the quarterback is, who the coach is. I mean, they've sort of put all of the pieces in the right way and they've been able to keep them together. It's also maddening, though, to me, Mike, when you think about some problems that have reared their head again. And I say problems, but we're watching Mike Vick. That's not a particularly great version of Mike Vick in this game. And I was thinking about last season suffering through the entire year of terrible quarterback play for a team that otherwise was absolutely, without question, a playoff team. And I think it's one of the maddening things looking forward to this season. I can't figure out how the hell the Steelers didn't at least address a backup quarterback position. I got into it with Jeffrey Schwartz, one of our buddies and coworkers on Twitter, a little bit. And he said, you can't judge a team by their backup quarterback. Fair. But when you have a 38-year-old quarterback that is coming off of elbow surgery, maybe you can, in my mind. So it's funny that I was watching them thinking, my God, they've been so lucky as an organization, good and lucky, to have an answer at quarterback and coach for this long that has given them stability.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.